She's not yours anymore. She's ours. We raised her. We paid you. And loved her after you abandoned her like trash. Chisom had always been the quiet one. At least that was how people knew her in the village of Omu. She was the daughter of Elder and Deaconess Wigwe. People often said she was born into honor. Their family was the kind of family where you removed your slippers before entering the house, where morning prayer started before the first end crowd, where no one dared to be seen outside after 7 p.m., and where all clothes were beyond the knees. Morals were stitched into the very fabric of their home. Discipline was served for breakfast. Respect was taught before a child could walk. And shame was something they never discussed because it was never supposed to visit. But in the deep corners of Chisom's heart, something stirred, something wild, something curious. She wanted more. Not the more her mother preached about, not the godly rewards of righteousness and patience. She wanted a life filled with adventure. She wanted to wear wigs that touched her waist and nails as long as chicken claws. She wanted to take pictures in front of fast cars, sip wine at rooftop bars, and be called sexy baby girl by admirers in places that smelled of luxury. Every evening, when the house quieted after dinner and family devotions, Chisom would sneak her mother's Android phone under her pillow and scroll endlessly through TikTok. She followed all the trendy big girls. She with her flawless makeup, Yvonne with her Range Rover, and Sia, who was always on a boat cruise somewhere in Banana Island with a handsome lover who looked like a music star. They all looked happy. They all looked free. They looked like they were living their best life. The life Chisom could only dream of while sweeping her father's compound or pounding yam in the backyard. She wanted to live that life badly. She couldn't wait to gain admission and leave home. There, she would experience freedom, start wearing miniskirts, showing her boobs, and living the kind of luxurious lifestyle her online friends lived, without anyone asking her what the word of God said about it. And Chisom was a very beautiful girl. A few years later, the admission letter came. It was like a key to her own freedom. She was going to study mass communication in one of the state universities in the country, away from home. Her parents were so excited, and her father prayed over the letter for an hour, asking God to protect his daughter and make her a shining light in the world of darkness. Her mother packed 2 boxes, one full of clothes, the other full of foodstuff and anointing oil. Her elder brother even bought her a new phone, so she wouldn't have an excuse to talk to the wrong people. He patted her head like she was still a child. But Chisom was already slipping through their fingers, and they didn't know it. Her life was already planned out. However, Chisom State University was not what Chisom expected. It was louder, faster, and hungrier. She met girls who wore makeup like armor and spoke with accents they didn't own. They were the happening babes in school, with large followers on TikTok and Instagram. They came to school in flashy cars and trendy clothes, and she could see the way the male lecturers looked at them in class. This girl got everything they wanted. That was exactly the kind of life Chisom had always wanted to live. She desired to be friends with them. One day, after class, she summoned the courage and walked up to them. "Hi, my name is Chisom, and I like you girls a lot. I've been following you on all your social media pages. I've been admiring you from afar, and I really want to be like you." The girls looked at her from head to toe first and then burst into laughter. She looked so awkward in her long skirt and loosely fitted blouse that her mother had gotten her. She felt embarrassed. One of the girls began, "Hey, I hope you're enjoying this story. But before we get back into the story, I noticed that only 6% of you are subscribed to this channel. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an upload. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? Who are your parents? The farm in the village. They are farmers. And you think you can belong? They asked. Our lifestyle is very expensive, and you need to have a sponsor, rich parents, a sugar daddy, or even a rich boyfriend. Just someone to fund the expensive lifestyle. That's the only way you can join us. Jason was willing to do anything. She wanted to be popular, trendy, and belong. She didn't want to be that local girl people knew her as. And in no time, she became friends with the campus bad girls. They introduced her to parties where the music thudded through her chest like a second heartbeat. They drank until they could no longer feel their legs. Soon, she forgot everything her parents had taught her and embraced the life her father constantly preached against. She stopped going to church and even avoided answering her mother's late night calls. She told herself she was fine. She told herself everyone was doing it, and she was really having the time of her life. But when she met D, everything spiraled out of control. D, also known as Dave, was everything her father warned her about. He was handsome, a smooth talker, a very rich Yahoo boy. He was the man of the moment on campus, and he spoiled Chiso with money, vacations, expensive clothes, jewelry, and human hair. Chisom, who had never known such attention, folded into his arms like soft cloth. She had become one of the happening babes in town. Dave was like a dream come true to her, and he promised to give her heaven and earth. Soon, she stopped attending lectures. There was no point going to school when she could have the life she dreamed of without working for it. Then one morning, she felt it. The nausea, the dizziness. Fear crept into her heart. She stood in front of the mirror in her tiny hostel room, staring at the reflection of herself that didn't look like her anymore. She hadn't seen her period in 2 months. She took a pregnancy test and it came out positive. She was 17 and pregnant. She felt a world crashing down on her. Chisom could already hear her father's voice thundering in her head. She could see her mother's face twisted in disappointment. Her siblings avoiding her, and the villagers whispering, the shame soaking into her skin like palm oil on white lace. She panicked and hoped Dave would marry her. But when she told Dave about her pregnancy, he flared up. You must be a fool to think that I will take responsibility for that bastard child you are carrying. Oh, you think I don't know how you sleep around with all the men in this campus? You must be so stupid. Look, I still have my life to live and you can't pin this pregnancy on me. Chisom cried and begged Dave to help her, but he kicked her out of his house after beating her up so mercilessly. 2 weeks later, he disappeared from the campus. He was gone like smoke in dry harmattan. His line no longer went through. His friends pretended not to know his whereabouts, and Chisom was alone. That was when reality dawned on her. Her belly was shooting out quickly, and she knew she had to do something as fast as she could because she couldn't bear to face the shame. She scraped every kobo she had and tried to buy pills, bitter pills that promised to erase her mistake. She swallowed them dry over and over again until her insides ached and her knees buckled under her weight. But the baby refused to go. One afternoon, after taking too many, she fainted on the floor. When she woke up hours later, her whole body ached, but still, nothing happened to her baby. Chisom became terrified. She couldn't take more pills. That night, she cried herself to sleep, holding her small belly and whispering words of regret. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this, she cried. Everyone had deserted her. All her friends had moved on as if she never existed. This baby was a burden, her punishment for living the life her parents had warned her against. Now she couldn't go home. Her father would definitely disown her, and her mother would be so broken. So Chisom ran. She packed her things and boarded a night bus to a faraway city where nobody knew her name. She thought it would be easier to disappear, but life outside the shelter of her family was cruel. She was penniless and spent nights in abandoned buildings and days searching for a job that didn't exist. No one was willing to offer a pregnant underage girl a job. Soon, the little money she had left ran out quickly. She was always hungry, and the baby inside her was growing heavier. One day, out of desperation, she decided to start hawking pure water. That was the only solution she could think of. She bought a bag of pure water on credit and started hawking on the streets. The sun roasted her skin as she wove between moving cars, shouting, "Cold pure water! Pure water!" She was tired, but she kept going because she had no choice. Every night she returned home exhausted but grateful to have even a little food to eat. It was on one of those days of hawking, one hot afternoon, that she met them. A sleek black car pulled over and a well-dressed couple stepped out. The woman's eyes softened when she saw Chisholm's swollen belly. They asked her name and where she was from, and Chisom told them the truth. They listened to her story with so much pity. After that, they took her to a restaurant, bought her food, and they sat down to talk. "We have no child," the woman began. "We have tried everything we can, but there has been absolutely no luck. We know this pregnancy has taken your youth away from you, but you can have your entire life back if you let us have this baby. We will take care of you, and you won't suffer anymore. We are very wealthy, and we will pay you handsomely." They showed her money, more than Chisom had ever seen in her life. Neat bundles tied with bands, enough to rent a house, buy new clothes, maybe even go back to school. It could change everything for her. Chisom was thrown into a state of confusion. At first, she said no. Every night she cried, thinking of the tiny kicks inside her belly. What kind of mother would a child think her to be if she sold her? Would she ever be able to live with herself? But weeks later, one night, as she lay on the cold floor, hunger gnawing at her ribs, she had a rethink. She was just 17, alone and suffering. If she decided to keep this child, what kind of life would she give it? Wasn't it better if the baby had parents who could love and provide for her? Mr. and Mrs. Clemens, the couple who had approached Chisom, had given her their business card in case she changed her mind. The next morning, she called them and said yes. From that day, her life took another turn. Mr. and Mrs. Clemens were so kind that Chisom sometimes wondered if they were real. They desperately wanted a child and didn't want to play with the golden opportunity they had gotten. To them, this was a rare chance. From the moment Chisom said yes, they took over her life. She was no longer hawking pure water under the scorching sun or sleeping on the cold cement floor of a one-room apartment she had managed to rent. Instead, they brought her into their home, a fine bungalow with bright yellow walls and a compound that smelled of flowers. She had her own room, clean and big, with windows that let in sunlight and a bed soft enough to make her cry the night she lay on it. Mrs. Clement, who insisted she called her auntie, took her to the best hospital in the city. They registered her properly, and the doctors ran all the tests they could. She was given vitamins, injections, and medicine. She saw things she never imagined she could have. Real care, people fussing over her health. Every morning she ate eggs, fish, and milk. In the afternoon she ate fresh fruits. At night, Auntie made sure her feet were massaged with warm water and oil. She was being given the treatment of a queen, and for the first time since she left home, Chisom felt safe. She convinced herself she had made the right decision. Maybe, just maybe, this is God's way of blessing me, she thought. The day of delivery came with a storm. It was one rainy evening. The clouds covered the sky as Mr. Clement drove speedily to the hospital, his hands almost shaking as he panicked. Chisom was at the back seat, screaming her lungs out in pain. Labor had gripped her like a wild animal, tearing through her body. She screamed until her throat went dry. When they got to the hospital, she was immediately carried into the labor room. The nurses shouted at her to push. Chisom never imagined this kind of pain. He thought she was going to die, and she almost did. She lost a lot of blood. Immediately, the cry of her baby was heard, and she drifted into unconsciousness as the doctors worked to save her. When she finally woke up, she was too weak to cry. But when they brought the baby, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, and placed the tiny bundle in her arm, Chisom sobbed. The baby was so beautiful. Small lips, oily hair, skin soft like silk. She named her Zora, meaning show the world. After one brief moment, she forgot all the pain. For the first month, she breastfed Zora. That was part of the agreement. She loved holding her baby, rocking her to sleep, singing her lullabies. Their bond grew strong, and it became hard to imagine life without the baby. But one day, Auntie walked into the room with a polite but firm smile. "It's time, Chisom," she said. They brought a nanny and took Zora away from her. At first, Chisom sat in bed feeling hollow. Her heart ached from emptiness, and her pulse pounded as if she was doing something wrong, especially when she heard the baby crying as they carried her away. But they told her not to come close. "It's for the best," Auntie said. "Remember, we had an agreement." Chisom sat in her room with her head bent as tears flowed down her cheeks. She stared at her palms, wondering if she had made a mistake. Then Mr. Clement walked in and handed her a small brown envelope. "Thank you, Chisom," he said with a smile, "for making us experience today. Zora has brought so much joy into our lives, and you promised to give her a good life. We wish you a good life too. And remember," he added, his face turning stern, "you've sold her to us. You no longer have any rights over her. Forget to ever add a child. You may leave tomorrow." Chisom felt her heart skip a bit at Mr. Clement's words. But as soon as he left the room, she tore the envelope open. Inside was a receipt from the bank. 10 million naira had been transferred into her account. 10 million. Chisom's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the numbers on the receipt for a long time, and then, just like that, the sorrow she felt area was pushed far away. All Chisom could think of at that moment was the beautiful life staring her in the face. She couldn't wait to spend the money. She left that same night, packed her things, and vanished from Mr. and Mrs. Clement's house. There was no goodbye, no forwarding address, and then the city became hers. One would have thought that Chisom would become wiser, but the reverse was the case. She rented a small but fine apartment in a beautiful estate. She bought new clothes, expensive wigs, jewelry, and makeup. She opened an Instagram page with her new iPhone and took photos by hotel poles wearing dresses that hugged her figure. No party took place in the city without Chisom's knowledge. She would sit in the VIP sections, drinking wines she couldn't pronounce, and live the life she had always dreamed of while flirting with the rich men in the city. 5 years later, she met someone special. His name was Obinna, tall, with smooth skin, the color of ripe cashew, and a smile that could melt eyes. He was a wealthy businessman, the CEO of his late father's shipping company. He first saw her at an event in Victoria Island where she was standing by herself, holding a glass cup, trying to look busy by secretly admiring the chandeliers. She looked so beautiful in her gorgeous red gown, which brought out all her curves. He walked up to her with a smile. "You look lost," he said. And Chisom, who had become an expert in handling famous men, laughed lightly. "Maybe I am. Can you help me find my way?" Obinna burst into laughter. "I think this place is jam-packed. There is a private pool outside where we could sit and talk if you don't mind." Chisom smiled back as they both walked out. They sat at the pool, talking and laughing for hours as if they were old friends. Obinna was a ladies' man, the kind of man who knew what to say to sway a woman and make her want more. As the day came to an end, he asked for her number and she gave it to him. He called her the next day and the next, and soon he was taking her out to fancy places, exquisite restaurants, luxury vacations, endless dinner dates. She felt like the luckiest woman alive. Obinna was different from all the men she had met. He listened when she spoke. He noticed the little things. He bought her expensive gifts and he never rushed or pressured her for anything. It was just so perfect. After 1 year, he proposed to her. Chisom couldn't believe it. All her life, she had prayed for this kind of man. And here he was, nearly with a diamond ring under the stars. And Chisom was so excited to say yes. The wedding plans began immediately. Obinna was eager to meet her parents. Chisom lied to him that she was an orphan. I have nobody, no father, no mother, and no sibling. My parents took everything my father owned and drove me out of the house. She told Obinna that day with tears flowing down her face. But the truth was, Chisom was scared. She had drifted far apart from her family, had done a lot of horrible things, and didn't know how to face them anymore. Hearing her story, Obinna was sad and decided to push forward with the wedding plans. But his mother was not okay with it at all. Obinna, how can you marry a girl without a family? She asked angrily. Okay, even if her family are late, is there an extended family that we can go to? I've always known there is something fishy about that girl, and at this point, I do not support this marriage. But Obinna was in love, and nothing anyone said made sense to him. He loved Chisom very much and couldn't wait to start life with her. So he was able to convince his family, and they moved on with the wedding plan. Their wedding was the talk of the town. White roses, golden decorations, musicians flown in from different countries. Chisom wore a dress that shimmered as she walked down the aisle. There was no family member present, but she convinced herself she didn't need them. It was best things stayed this way. After all, she was finally living the life she wanted, or so she thought. The first day of their marriage was blissful. Obinna was so kind and sweet. Chisom was living like a queen with servants all around the house attending to her. Obinna ensured she got everything she ever wanted, and it was safe to say life was good. But as the months flew by, and then a year, there was no sign of pregnancy. Obinna loved children, and as the only child, he wanted to have many. Sometimes he would joke that their house was too quiet, and that he wanted to hear the cries of their children. Chisom would laugh and nod, promising that soon they would have many. But then more years passed and still nothing happened. At first, they blamed stress. Then they blamed traveling. But deep inside, even though Obinna remained hopeful, she started to lose sleep. After years of no single sign of pregnancy, Obinna suggested that they see doctors to be sure everything was okay. It's over 6 years now and still nothing, he said. Chisom panicked, but when Obinna insisted, she obliged. They began to see doctors, one test from another. Then finally, her worst fear came true. Chisom had Asherman syndrome, a condition where scar tissue builds up inside the uterus after unsafe abortions or complications during childbirth. Her womb was damaged, scarred, thin like paper, and she wouldn't be able to carry a child. Now she couldn't have any more children. Her dream life slowly turned to smoke. The doctor's words hit her like a hammer on dry wood. She sat there numb, hearing echoes of her past life flash through her eyes. The pills she swallowed, the fainting on the hostel floor, the bleeding, the choice to sell Zora. Obinna was quiet for days after they got the news. He refused to talk to her. So many questions were going on in his mind. Chisom had told him she had an abortion, and he didn't even know how to live with the truth that his wife couldn't bear him a child simply because she had chosen to be wayward. His heart was filled with pain and anger. He knew he shouldn't judge her, but he couldn't help it, especially when her mistakes were causing pain in his life right now. His mother couldn't stop blaming him. I warned you about the girl. Now look at your life. Look at the mess you've gotten yourself into. Obinna was slowly losing his peace. Chisom had never sat down to reflect on her mistake, but now that everything seemed like it has changed, she wished things could turn around. Obinna's silence was killing her. In the deep of the night, she often found herself crying softly, wishing she would be able to have a child. But it was just impossible. And then everything began. Obi started keeping late nights. He would come home drunk and walk past her like she was a stranger on the street. The house they had once decorated together, filling it with warmth and light, now felt cold and empty. And soon, the silence turned into insults. You wayward woman! He spat one night, throwing his shoes across the living room as he stormed in from work. Should have known this was what you do, sleeping with every Dick and Harry in this street, and flushing away all the eggs in your belly. My mom warned me against you. She froze. This was almost midnight, and all she had done was wait for him to return from work. She had hoped to talk to him. Maybe things would get better between them. But she was wrong. Her hope was dashed, and his words cut her deeper than any knife could. And she was yet to see the worst. Everything she did now became a problem, and Obinna didn't even spare her with his tongue. Every insult sharper than the last. You are so useless. What's the point of marrying you when you can't give me a child? I must have been so mad to marry you. A pretty face with nothing inside. A cheap, common prostitute. Your life is so miserable and hopeless. And it was just like his anger grew every single day. Soon, he started eating her at the slightest provocation. And it didn't take much to anger him. Sometimes it was just because he couldn't find his shoes, and other times just because his shirts were not ironed well enough. Just silly things that could be easily ignored. Once, he had slapped her so hard that her ears rang for 2 days. The worst part of it was that no one was on her side. His family hated her so much with passion. His mother, who had never even liked her from day one, now called her a witch. You have tied my son's destiny. You better go before your bad luck finishes him. She had no one to turn to. She had cut herself off from her family many years ago. Lied to Obina that she was an orphan, so he wouldn't ask questions. Now she was really alone. She had even blocked her parents, her siblings, old friends from school, from social media. She didn't want anyone to find her. And now her life had become so miserable and empty. Then it happened. On a quiet evening, Chisom was sitting in the living room folding a shirt, waiting for Obinna to come back from work like she always did. She had made his favorite soup, hoping maybe tonight it would smile at her, just like old times. She had prayed and fasted that morning, believing something might change. But when she heard his car horn at the gate, her heart began to race, not from excitement but from fear. Something inside her told her this night would be different, and it was. The door opened slowly. Obina now walked in, but was not alone. Beside them stood a young woman. She was tall and fair, wearing a tight dress that showed off her round body. She was heavily pregnant. Her long braids swung down her back, and her nails were painted bright red. She smiled like someone who owned the world. Her name was Amanda. She didn't greet her, didn't look at the food she had prepared. He just pointed at Amanda as if she was a trophy. She's carrying my child, he said in a voice as cold as a Matan wind. Since you are too barren to give me a child, I went and got it somewhere else. Chisholm's body felt weak. Her legs shook under her, and she grabbed the edge of the chair to stop herself from falling. But Obina wasn't finished. If you can't take it, leave, he said without blinking. The door is open. Get out of my house. Chisom stood there, frozen, tears filling her eyes as her toes tightened. Her hands trembled. She wanted to beg, to ask him to remember the love they once shared. But her mouth wouldn't open. She watched Amanda smile at her. A very foolish smile that made her small and helpless. The next day, Amanda moved in. Just like that. She came with boxes of clothes, jewelry, shoes, and perfumes. She walked into Chisom's home as if it had always been hers. She took over everything, the master bedroom, the kitchen, and the hearts of all the MS, who now called her Madame Amanda. She, the woman who once ruled the house with love and pride, became invisible. Her heart broke into tiny pieces. This was the man she had loved. The man who once called her his queen. They had shared so many happy moments together. She had stayed because she believed he would come back to her, that he would forgive her. But one night, when she tried to talk to him, tears running down her cheeks, begging, Obinna, please, I'm sorry. Forgive me. He looked at her with cold, dead eyes and said, if you can't stay and take the heat, leave. You don't have a place here anymore. Chisom thought about leaving, but where would she go? She had told him she was an orphan. She had no family. She had no one to run to, no home, no safety, nowhere to hide. So she stayed, and that was how her suffering really began. Amanda made Chisom a personal house girl. They had many maids in the house, but Amanda said it made her happy to see Chisom serving her. Clean my shoes, Amanda would say, sticking out her feet while chewing gum loudly. Wash my underwear. Massage my feet. My legs are swollen from carrying a child, something you can never do. Chisom never refused. She dared not. Amanda was clever with lies, and Obinna believed every word. If Amanda said that Chisom was lazy, Obinna would slap her. If Amanda accused Chisom of saying bad things about the baby, Obinna would beat the hell out of Chisom without asking questions. One afternoon, Amanda walked into the living room holding a bottle of red palm oil. She smiled sweetly at Chisom, then poured the entire bottle on the white rug in the sitting room. The same rug Chisom had chosen years ago when decorating the house. Clean it, Amanda said. With what? Chisom asked quietly. With your hands, Amanda replied. No soap, just your hands. Chisom dropped to her knees and scrubbed while Amanda laughed and laughed. Old cargo, Amanda called her. Expired goat, barren woman. Chisom's eyes filled with tears, and Amanda pretended to be shocked. Oh. You are crying. She sneered. Did I rip your womb out when you were busy in the city spreading your legs for every man and aborting every child God gave you? Did you ever think about your future? When guests came into the house, Amanda introduced herself as Obinna's wife. She pointed to Chisom and said, that's our house help. Chisom swallowed the pain. Amanda took away everything she had, her fine clothes, her jewelry, her shoes, and even the perfumes Obinna had bought when he used to love her. She burned Chisom's wedding dress and sold all her golden earrings. Chisom was driven into the boys' quarters, and Obinna said nothing to all of this. Sometimes he even laughed when Amanda insulted Chisom. The love he had once shown her had turned into bitter hatred. When Amanda's belly grew bigger, Chisom became her nursemaid. She ran errands for her, walking long distance in the hot sun to buy fresh fruit or anything Amanda wanted. And when she came back, sweating and tired, Amanda never said thank you. Instead, she always found something to complain about. This mango no sweet. Are you trying to poison me? Or are you so useless you can't even do anything right? Every day, Chisom woke up to insult and went to bed with tears in her eyes. And yet she stayed because she had nowhere to go to. Because she still held onto the tiniest hope that maybe, just maybe, things would change. But they never did. One day, Amanda sent Chisom to the market, and then it began raining heavily. She didn't go out with an umbrella, and she wasn't allowed to use the car anymore. By the time she got back to the house, she was shivering. Her teeth clattered, and her feet were bare and bleeding. Her wrapper clung to her body like wet paper. She was soaked from head to toe like a beggar dragged out of a gutter. Amanda took one look at her and burst into laughter. Shameless woman, Amanda said. Just look at you. See what your life has turned into. I hope you catch cold and die. Then I can finally have my home and my man all to myself. Her words cut deep. Chisom stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. For months, she had endured Amanda's wickedness, biting her tongue and pretending not to care. But something inside her broke that day. Chisom's eyes filled with hot tears. She clenched her fists. Her body was weak, but her anger gave her strength. And I hope you die in that pregnancy. She spat back, her voice shaking with rage. Amanda froze. Her face turned pale. Then she screamed like a mad woman. Obinna! Obinna, come and hear what this witch said. She wants me to die. She wants my baby to die. It was the beginning of Chisom's worst nightmare. Obinna came rushing into the living room. His eyes were red with fury. Amanda rushed to him, crying fake tears, holding her belly. I'm scared, Obinna, she said. She wants me dead. She says she wants your baby dead. Amanda winked, pointing at Chisom like she was a criminal. Obinna's face twisted with rage. So you want me to die? Hmm? He shouted, his voice thunderous. Before Chisom could speak, his hand came hard across her face. Then another slap followed, and another. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her across the room. Chisom screamed as he slammed her against the wall, hitting her over and over until she was too weak to cry. You barren witch! You evil woman! He shouted, kicking her ribs as she lay on the floor. By the time he was done, Chisom's face was swollen and blood trickled from her nose and lips. Her body ached all over and her legs trembled as she tried to stand. Now get out of my house. Obinna backed. If I ever see you here again, I will kill you myself. Chisom looked at him dazed. He opened the door and pushed her out into the cold rain. She had nothing on her, no slippers, not even a coin in her pocket. That night, Chisom slept on the cold pavement in front of a clothes shop. She curled herself into a ball, shivering. Her body burned with fever from the rain. She had never felt so alone in her life. She had lost everything. Her home, her dignity, her hope. She wept bitterly in the dark, her tears mixing with rainwater on her face. I can't do this anymore, she whispered to herself. Her mind drifted to her past, to the only one thing she had left behind. Zora, her baby, the child she had sold. I have to find my child, she said aloud, even though no one was there to hear her. She is the only proof that I am not barren. Her words hung in the cold night air. She sat up slowly, her bones aching, and wiped her face with the back of her hand. She didn't know where to start, but she knew she had to try. At sunrise, she went from street to street, begging people for money. Some ignored her, some insulted her, but a few kind hearts dropped coins into her hand. Little by little, she gathered enough for a small meal and transport fare. It has been so many years since she last saw Mr. and Mrs. Clement, since she last held her baby in her arms. Back then, she wasn't scared. Back then, she was chasing freedom and riches. But now, nothing else mattered. She could still see Zora's tiny finger wrapped around her. She could still feel her baby's soft breathing as she lay on her chest. Chisom's heart ached with longing. I must find her by all means, she said to herself. And so a painful search began. Chisom spent days searching. She went back to their old neighborhood, asking anyone she could find if they knew anything about Mr. and Mrs. Clement, but it was difficult. Many said they had moved away. Shops were closed, faces were different. But on the fourth day, an old woman selling roasted corn by the roadside gave Chisom the information she was longing for. They moved, the woman said, her voice thick. They left after they adopted that baby. Do you know where they went? Chisom's voice trembled. The woman shook her head. Some say they left the country. Canada. America, who knows? The air left Chisom's lungs. The world blood. They were gone. She would never get to see her daughter again. But she didn't stop. She begged the cyber cafe attendant to help her search online. She tried their names on Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, but there was no trace. Soon she ran out of money. She began sleeping under bridges, wrapped herself in thin wrappers as cold winds battered her skin. She couldn't bring herself to go back home. Weeks turned into months. By then, Chisom had gotten a job as a cleaner in a cyber cafe. She was still determined to find her daughter, so she saved every penny she could lay her hands on. One day, in the cyber cafe where she worked, a young man helping her search gasped, "I found something." He screamed. It was a blog post. Mr. Clement's obituary. He had died 2 years ago. And at the bottom of the post, he mentioned survived by his wife, Clara, and their beloved daughter, Zara Clement. Zara? Chisom breath it. Zora! They had changed her daughter's name. There was a small picture. Zara was standing next to Mrs. Clement, a young girl now, about 13 years old. Her eyes, Chisholm's eyes, she was beautiful and looked very happy. Mrs. Clement's address was listed in the article. Chisom traveled for 2 days in rickety buses to get there. She stood outside the tall gate of the fine house, watching from afar. Then she saw her daughter Zara laying in the garden. Her laughter floated through the air like music. Chisom stood at the tall iron gate for hours, staring at her daughter Zara playing inside the compound. Her hands trembled as she reached for the bell. She pressed it once, then twice. When the gates finally opened, Mrs. Clement appeared, looking older now, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She looked at Chisom for a long moment, her lips tightening as if holding back something bitter. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. Chisom took a deep breath, her throat dry. "I want my daughter," she said softly. "I want Zara back." There was silence. Then Mrs. Clemens laughed, a short and sharp laughter. "Your daughter. You sold that to us, remember? And we have proofs." Chisom's heart pounded in her chest. "Please, I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. I was suffering. Please, she's the only thing I have in this world. I want to make it right." Mrs. Clement's face hardened. "She's not yours anymore." She stopped. "She's ours. We raised her. We paid you and loved her after you abandoned her like trash." The words stung Chisom, but Chisom refused to leave. Mrs. Clement called on the security and ejected her out of the compound. Chisom didn't know what to do. She sat by the roadside and cried so hard until she had no more tears in her eyes. And just when she thought all hope was lost, her mind turned to hope, her family. It was high time they knew the truth. Chisom boarded a bus and went back to her village. It had been over 20 years since she left home. The roads were still dusty and the trees still lined the path like guts. When she reached the front of her father's compound, she hesitated. And then the door opened. Her mother stood there, holding a bowl of water. The bowl slipped from her hand as she stared. Her father came out next, his walking stick tapping the ground. They both froze as if they had seen a ghost. "Chisom!" Chisom fell to her knees. "Mama, Papa, it is me." That night she told them everything about her mistakes, the pregnancy, the baby she sold, and her marriage to Obinna. Tears flowed freely as she confessed the life she had wasted. Her father sat in silence for a long time. Her mother cried, wiping her face with the edge of her wrapper. Then her father spoke. His voice was soft. "We have searched everywhere for you, Chisom. We thought you were dead. Thank God you are alive. And now we get to see you again. You shouldn't have put yourself through all this. Yes, you would have been unhappy. You would have been disappointed. But you should have come back home to us. Sending your child was evil. Who am I to judge you?" And then he opened his arms. Her family forgave her. Her siblings came home, some crying, others staring in disbelief. With her family's support, Chisom was able to file a court case against the claimant. They all went with her to court. Her father sold a portion of his land to pay the legal fees, and after many long, hard months, the judge ruled in their favor. Chisom had been 17 at the time she signed the paper selling her child. She was a minor by law. The claimant had no right to take her daughter without her parents' consent. The judge ordered the claimant to release Zara to her biological mother, and they did. Sadly, the day Zara came home, Chisom thought her life was beginning again. She was finally going to be a mother, but it wasn't. Zara refused to speak to her. On the way back, she sat with her arm crossed, eyes staring out of the window as if trying to see a way out. Chisom reached for her hand. Zara, she said shyly, my baby. Zara jacked her hand away. I am not your baby, she screamed. And don't you ever call me that name again. My name is Zara. From the day you sold me, you ceased to be my mother. The words punched Chisom in the stomach. She had dreamed of this reunion for years. Imagine Zara and tears and forgiveness. But Zara was cold, hard. Even her face reminded Chisom of Obinna on his worst days. Back at the house, things only got worse. Zara refused to eat her mother's food. She complained that the room was too small, the bed was too hard, and the clothes her mother bought her were too cheap. This is not my life. Take me home, she screamed one day, throwing the blades to the floor. I'm supposed to be in Canada this year. Do you even know what summer camp is? You just want to ruin my life, just the way you ruined yours. Jason worked as a cleaner in the bank. Her salary was nothing compared to the pocket money Zara used to get from the claimant on a weekly basis. She tried to save her to buy her small things, a nice shoe, maybe a school bag, but it was never enough. Zara called her useless and poor thing in front of people. You are just a cleaner. You are nothing. No wonder you had to sell me. I wish you had died and I never got to see you. Sometimes, Chisom cried quietly at night, stuffing her wrapper in her mouth so no one could hear her. She had prayed. She had fasted. She had done everything she could to make Zara love her more. But the bitterness only grew. Zara hated her so much and she was not willing to forgive her. One cold rainy morning, something inside Chisom finally broke. It wasn't because of the rain pounding on the zinc or the cold that sighed into her skin. It was Zara, her own daughter, her flesh and blood, the child she had searched for, prayed for, and fought so hard to win back. That same child had looked her in the face and spat at her. You are not my mother and you will never be. You are a witch, she had screamed. The sting of her words were worse than the spit. Chisom stood there frozen for a moment, then wiped her face slowly with the edge of her wrapper. She didn't cry, not yet. She couldn't. Her heart was too heavy to make space for tears. Later that day, she boarded a bus to her father's house. The sky was still dark and the rain hadn't stopped, but she walked barefoot, not caring about the mud or the cold. When she arrived, her mother opened the door and gasped. Chisom, I can't do this anymore, Chisom cried, her voice cracking. She dropped to her knees right there in the doorway, her shoulders shaking as tears poured down her cheeks. This girl will never see me as her mother. She hates me so much. Her mother sighed deeply and helped her inside. Her father said nothing. He just sat in his chair, his walking stick resting against his knee, staring at the floor in silence. All through the night, Chisom lay on her old bed thinking. And finally, she made a decision. It was the hardest decision of her life. She would take Zara back to Mrs. Clement. Mrs. Clement looked older than the last time she saw her. Her face was thin, and the bright woman Chisom remembered was now weighed down with sorrow. It was clear she hadn't smiled in a long time. The loss of Zara had drained the life out of her. But when she saw the girl standing beside Chisom, her eyes softened and her body trembled as she stood up from the chair. She held Zara's hand for a moment, then slowly let go. She will never see me as her mother, Chisom said. Her voice was weak but honest. She belongs here with you. She tried to stay strong, but the tears still came. You can have her back. But I beg you for only one thing. Please, let me write to her sometimes. Let me see her sometimes too. I have made terrible mistakes. can't undo them. But I pray that one day she might find it in her heart to forgive me. Mrs. Clement was silent for a long down time. The room was so quiet that Chisom could hear the sound of her own heartbeat. Finally, Mrs. Clement nodded. Welcome home, she said softly to Zara, stretching her arms wide. Zara ran into them without looking back. Chisom stood there, frozen in place, watching them walk away together. Mrs. Clement led Zara inside the house. The door closed slowly behind them, and it felt like a heavy stone was dropped on Chisom's chest. She pressed a hand against her heart, but it didn't stop the pain. Her heart had shattered into pieces that could never be put back together again. Chisom returned to her father's house. There was no joy in her life anymore, but there was peace. Quiet peace. She took a small job at the village health center. She swept the floors every morning and cleaned the toilet. She washed the windows until they shone and arranged chairs neatly in the waiting room. The pay was small, but it was enough to sort out her simple needs. It was a good start, and she was determined to pick up the broken pieces of her life one by one and become a better person. She had learned her lesson the hardest way a person could learn it. Every month, she sent small gifts to Mrs. Clement's house, a pretty dress, a new pair of shoes. Sometimes she sent books she thought Zara might enjoy. Other times, she bought bottles of perfumes. She also wrote letters, pouring her heart onto the pages. She didn't know if Zara ever read them. She didn't know if Zara ever smiled when she saw her name on the package. But still, she hoped. She hoped that one day, maybe years from now, Zara would forgive her. And even if she didn't, she soon promised herself one thing. She will never stop loving her daughter. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this amazing story, and I hope you enjoyed it. It was sad though, but in life we do not always have a happy ending, even though I pray Chisom gets one. Now, I want you to share your thoughts about the story in the comment section. And if you are yet to subscribe to our channel, please do not skip this video without hitting the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Thank you so much for all your love and support. I do not take them for granted. Bye.